Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and I'll be your guide on this journey from consciousness to cluelessness and back around again. Thanks for joining me for another Sunday solo episode. Whether it's Sunday night and you're gearing up for your week, Monday morning and you're on your way to work, or whatever day this podcast has found you, I'm really glad you're here. So, I've talked on here or interviewed people who talk about being zero waste or low waste, using less plastic, being more eco-friendly. And I thought it would be good to share some honest zero waste fails that I have had in my life to just remind you that there's never going to be a perfect zero waste situation. So what does that mean, zero waste? It means living your life in a way that produces the least amount of waste possible. So no plastic waste, basically not having trash, having recyclables, but not having trash. And then some would argue it would be even further, like with recyclables and all that jazz. So there's a lot to it. But I think it's a great goal to live to make less waste and make those choices and learn about how to do that. I sometimes, as I've talked about in the past, can get a little obsessive about things and want to try and do things right and be really good at it. And that was definitely true when I was trying to go zero waste, which I don't even like that term anymore because I feel like low waste is more accurate. No one can be zero waste in our world right now. So, low waste. When I was trying to go low waste, I had a few moments that I thought I would share to remind you there is not a perfect zero waste or low waste person, or if it is, it's definitely not me. So, number one, I had gotten this vegan mayo that I grabbed from Target. This was in grad school a few years back. And I accidentally grabbed black truffle or like truffle mayo. And when I tried it, I hated it. And I didn't know that's what I grabbed. And I thought it was really gross. I just did not like it. But I was like, well, it's in this plastic container that I already bought, and I'm really trying to not waste food and not waste things. Like, what am I going to do with this? And so I thought I was having a genius idea when I thought I would use it as a hair mask. I had done mayo hair masks in the past, and I know that I sound a little crazy right now, but it actually makes your hair super soft and shiny. So don't knock it till you try it. However, I put black truffle mayo in my hair, and then I, went to rinse it out, and it smelled like black truffle. And so truffle, like black salt has a sulfury taste. I use it in recipes like tofu scramble because it gives it a little bit more of an eggy taste without it being eggs. So imagine that smell, that like sulfury kind of eggy smell on my head, and it would not come out. I kept having to call my roommate in for him to sniff my head, poking my head out of the shower every time after I scrubbed it to get the smell of truffle mayonnaise out of my hair because I was so adamant that I could not waste this mayonnaise. And I showered for, I don't even know, it felt like the rest of the night. The smell still would not come out, and I just had to get out of the shower and accept that I was going to bed smelling like truffle mayo. And I think it went away after a day or two, but it was really, really potent. So before you make a hair mask out of something random, because you're trying to use it up, just check on the smell. I would check on the smell and see if you're okay with that smell for a while, because it's a possibility. So next up in my list of zero waste fails is trying to make my own liquid dish soap. I got a bar of Castile soap and found some Pinterest idea about grating it, and then I think there was heating it in water, and then it would be liquid, and there was adding something else. I don't totally remember the process, but I remember grating a bar of soap for what seemed like hours, and then trying to create this thing following this recipe that I found, and it created a glob, like a complete sticky, gooey glob, and not soap. It was the weirdest consistency. And I thought, that's okay. I'll just scoop some out of this big mason jar when I'm ready to wash the dishes. It'll be fine. It like wasn't soap anymore. I couldn't wash anything. It didn't, I don't know what I did to the soap on a molecular level, but it was not soap anymore. And it also wasn't just water. It was like more greasy somehow. It was really bad. And I kept that shit on my shelf next to the sink for so long because I felt so bad for wasting all of that soap. And I'm going to be honest, I was a little bitter that I wasted so much time. And finally, I just had to accept. I mean, this was probably like a month or two that it sat there, but I didn't use it because it was gross. I mean, literally imagine the consistency of snot. That's what I made. And I finally just decided to dump it out and move on and not be too hard on myself and buy some dish soap that wasn't so disgusting. So that was another kind of quick fail. My third one is probably the best. And I'm sure there's other ones that I'm forgetting, but these are three that stick in my mind. But this one I think really takes the cake. So I was steaming some broccoli, and I had one of those pots where you then put the colander on top and or steam basket or whatever it is, and then you steam the broccoli so there's water underneath. So I'm doing that. Broccoli's done. I'm like, oh, look at this water. I saw on so-and-so's Instagram that I follow that sometimes they use their cooking water from different things to water their plants. I was like, this is perfectly good water. I bet there's nutrients in it from the broccoli somehow. So I took broccoli water, as one does, and watered some plants. So a few days go by, and it's starting to stink in the house. And it's that kind of smell where you walk around, but you can't identify where it's coming from, and it's driving you nuts. It was like, did something die? Is there a pair of shoes that are just like rotting? Is it the garbage? Is it the compost? And you just can't figure out what smells. It was days of it just getting worse and stronger somehow. And then finally, I was literally laying in bed, and it hit me what the smell smelled like and why. It smelled like broccoli. And when I lifted that plant up to my nose, I almost gagged because the plant smelled like old steamed broccoli. And that's where the smell was coming from in our house. It was vile. So that plant had to relocate to an outside home. And I think of that all the time when I'm going to use any water from cooking. Before doing that, again, this is a smell thing. Think about how it's going to smell, because that should be in your consideration. I never would have thought about that. I just was trying so hard to use all my water and food, and it was disgusting. So, word to the wise for that one. And what's interesting is that these all happened during a time where I was kind of in the beginning more of learning about less food waste or less plastic or whatever it is, and sustainability. And so I was really trying to be perfect. So these all actually, now they're funny now, but they made me feel really guilty at like the time. I was devastated to have to pour out this soap glob. I was really upset that I was going to have to waste mayo. So instead I put it in my head. And the water, I was like, oh, I should really start like not wasting any water. There's water crises everywhere, even in our country. I'm going to pour it in this poor lavender plant, I think it was. And that obviously didn't go well too, but I really beat myself up about it. And I think now why these stories are funny to me is because I've given up on trying to strive for perfection in being zero waste or low waste, because that is not possible. So when these moments happen, it's funny because you can't always be perfect. something isn't going to work out. You're going to have to buy something or whatever it is, and that's okay. And if you laugh at them and move forward and try again versus dwell on them and feel guilty about something that is out of your control sometimes, it's not going to be fun anymore. And learning to live healthier and use less and be better stewards of the earth, like those should be enjoyable. That should be a fun thing you should be doing. That should be fun for you. So if it's not, you're pushing yourself and making yourself feel guilty for these mishaps that are going to happen. That's not good. So don't do that. Don't do that. Do as I say, not as I do, because it is not helpful and it made me feel so terrible. And now they're funny because I made a broccoli smelling plant. I had a mayo smelling head for a while, and I made a soap glob, and that's just what it is. Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. If you are enjoying this podcast, hit subscribe wherever you're listening. If you want to help me get this into the ears of more listeners, send it to a friend, text it to a family member, share on social media. Whatever you can do really helps me out. If you haven't yet, head over to patreon.com/consciouslycarly and join in on yoga and tarot card pulling and recipes and vegan videos, all of that jazz. And finally, head over to my website, consciouslycarly.com, and check out the new Self-Love Reset course. I think you'll love it. Until next time.